Some things are unavoidable, like taxes after income, or aging in life, or controversies after defense deals. And trust me, the last one is unavoidable too. There could be multiple concerns, sometimes over quality, sometimes over quantity, and always over cost. The latest drone deal between India and the US is one such case. We've told you about this one. India is all set to buy 31 drones from the United States. They're manufactured by General Atomic. They're called the MQ-9B drones. And what's the price tag? Multiple reports mention $3.5 billion. That's $3.5 billion for 31 drones. Now, we did the math. If you go with this figure of 3.5 billion, it comes to around $112 million per drone, or 900 crore rupees per drone. Is that too high? Well, India's opposition parties say it is. The Congress party claims the government is overpaying, and that too around 4 times more. And such claims have been making the rounds since last week. That's when Prime Minister Modi visited the US. That's also when the deal was announced. Earlier this week, the Defense Ministry issued a clarification. It said the price and other terms are yet to be finalized. In other words, do not jump the gun. Wait for the deal to be actually signed. But yesterday, another report emerged. This one quoted official sources in the Indian government. And what does it say? That India is set to strike a major bargain and the drones could be sold at 27% less than what other countries paid. So you've got 3 different versions. The opposition says we are overpaying, the government says the price is not decided yet, and unnamed sources say we are getting a bargain. So which one is it? Honestly, we'll have to wait this out. Only an official agreement can answer this question. In the meantime, let me tell you something about defense deals. It's not straightforward at all. There are many factors which decide the final price, like what extra features you want. Are you also getting technology transfer? Is there a local production plan? Think of it like your online food order. The sticker price may be $20, but your checkout price could be much higher. Maybe you added an extra sauce. Or maybe there's extra delivery fee because you live far away. All of this contributes to the final price. And defense deals are very similar, except multiplied by millions. Take this MQ-9B drone, which India is buying from the US. Official sources say the deal could be struck for $3 billion. If so, then it's $99 million per drone. Now, the UAE has bought the same drone. They purchased 18 drones for $2.9 billion. Do the math. It's $165 million per drone. Australia also has this drone on their wish list. A deal was struck for $980 million, 12 drones for $980 million. That works out to $80 million per drone. The deal fell through, perhaps because of the rate. Then you have Britain. They bought 16 drones at $69 million per aircraft. Do you see the difference in rates? The UAE paid $165 million, Australia was set to pay $80, Britain paid only $69. And this is how defense deals work. Your final cost depends on your requirements. The UK, for example, did not buy sensors or weapons. They just wanted a small radar. But India's package is more extensive. It includes sensors, weapons, and anti-submarine capabilities. So naturally, it will be more expensive. And this applies to all military equipment. Take the Patriot missiles, for example. They're lethal surface-to-air weapons produced by the US. The average cost of a missile is $4 million. Guess how much Saudi Arabia paid for it? $10 million per missile. The Netherlands also bought the same ones. They paid around $12.5 million per missile. Another example is the S-400 missiles. India bought 5 systems from Russia. We paid around $1 billion per system. Turkey bought the same equipment. They paid $3 billion for 2. So $500 million more per missile system. That's what Ankara paid. My point is, cost differs. If you add sensors or radars or weapons, the product will become more expensive. That's also what happened with the Rafales. On paper, the planes became more expensive, but the package was different too. Could the MQ-9 be a similar case? We say it's best to not jump the gun, wait for the official word, but even then, it's tough to compare rates. These are strategic purchases after all. You can't just list out in newspapers what features you've bought. That's like advertising your strengths to your enemy. The bottom line is this: comparing such purchases is best left to experts, to auditors, to veterans and arms dealers. Because you may think you're comparing apples to apples, but unless you bite into it, you never know. In geopolitics, positions evolve. Your interests of today are not your interests of tomorrow. Case in point, a recent joint statement by India and the Philippines. But first, some context. The Filipino foreign minister is in New Delhi. He held talks with S. Jaishankar on Thursday. Then they issued a joint statement. Next. UNCLOS is the United Nations Convention on Laws of the Seas, UNCLOS. Basically, it sets maritime rules. In 2016, they ruled on Beijing's claims over the South China Sea. Now, if you ask China, 90% of the sea belongs to them. But the UN rejected that claim. It asked China to stop activities near Filipino waters. Now, in 2016, India's reaction was cautious, the usual stuff. We take note of the verdict, we support freedom of navigation, all parties must respect UNCLOS, very diplomatic and very careful. But you know what was missing? India's statement did not ask China to adhere to the verdict. Cut to 2023, the language has changed. New Delhi wants China to accept and implement the 2016 decision. There is no ambiguity anymore. So the question is, what has changed? Well, relations with China have nosedived since 2016. Both countries are locked in a border standoff. China is not interested in peaceful coexistence. So what should India do? Reach out to other countries in a similar situation. The ASEAN members fit the bill. 4 of them have maritime disputes with China. Plus, they're interested in Indian weapons. This week, India gifted an active duty warship to Vietnam. Talks are also underway for the BrahMos missile. The Philippines has already bought them. Delivery is expected to start by December. It's a really well-rounded relationship. India and Southeast Asia share cultural and historical ties. They have a similar colonial past. They have a free trade agreement in place, and now they also have a common rival, China. For New Delhi, this is uncharted waters, though. Yes, India has always called for a free and open Indo-Pacific, but South China Sea is the Western Pacific. It is not India's traditional sphere of influence. Though of late, India has been focusing more on this region. In the month of May, the Indian Navy held joint drills with ASEAN states. It was the first such Indian exercise with the bloc. The Navy chief was himself in Singapore to flag it off. Tells you how serious New Delhi is. America's top diplomat for East Asia was asked about India's role in this region, and he said he wants more India-US cooperation. He also sees India playing a greater role in the South China Sea. But what's in it for New Delhi? Well, for starters, it keeps China occupied, sort of like a second front other than the Himalayas. And secondly, opportunities. We keep talking about looking and acting east, but the true potential is still untapped. India is only the 8th biggest trading partner for ASEAN. China is the biggest, and this could be a chance to improve that. After all, both sides find themselves in the same equation. Their trade with China keeps growing, but their relations with China keep deteriorating. So maybe it's time to write a new equation, one without China. Also, the defense deals. Southeast Asia is spending $43 billion on defense. American weapons are too expensive for them. Russia is too busy. China is their adversary. So what options do they have? A handful of countries, including India and South Korea. And both these countries, India and South Korea, are making efficient and affordable arms. Politically, this is a big shift for India. It's not reacting to China's power games. It is taking the power games to China. Cheers. We saw evidence of this last week in the United States. Prime Minister Modi talked about coercion in the Indo-Pacific. It was a clear reference to China. And now India is openly backing the Philippines against Beijing. These are signs of a more assertive policy. It doesn't yet make India a major power in the Western Pacific, but it certainly signals that intent. Does age bring wisdom? Look at some old people around you, and you may get the answer. Oldest doesn't always mean wisest. Just like the United States of America, it's the oldest democracy in the world. It's like that old man who keeps advising everyone else. But what about his own affairs? Let's put American democracy under the scanner. Let's ask that uncomfortable question. Is the US a backsliding democracy? And today is a perfect day for this conversation because yesterday, the US Supreme Court gave a historic verdict. It struck down affirmative action in colleges. Now, what does that mean? What is affirmative action? It is used to give greater opportunities to certain groups. The criteria can be different. It can be gender, race, even religion. In most cases, it takes the form of quotas, reservation. Suppose a community or group has been historically underrepresented. They will get quotas for jobs and education. This is affirmative action in a nutshell. In India, it is done on the basis of caste and religion. In the US, it was done on the basis of race. Since the 1960s, colleges had quotas for African Americans. The idea was to increase diversity. But recently, there has been a backlash. The argument is that quotas violate the principle of equality. So the matter reached the Supreme Court. 6 judges voted to strike down affirmative action. 3 judges voted against. Needless to say, there is a lot of criticism. President Joe Biden says he's severely disappointed.
You know, I know today's court decision is a severe disappointment to so many people, including me. But we cannot let the decision be a permanent setback for the country. We need to keep an open door of opportunities.
President Biden, the Congressional Black Caucus said the Supreme Court has thrown into question its own legitimacy. Is this a rogue court?
This is not a normal court.
His Republican rival is happy, though. Donald Trump says it's a great day for America. Tells us how divided this country is. One group says this verdict will lead to segregation, that only rich white people will attend these colleges. The other side says about time.
When I heard Judge Scalia suggest that maybe blacks do better at schools that are not as fast as UT, I didn't know if I was in the courtroom at the United States Supreme Court or at a Donald Trump rally.
You cannot cure racial discrimination that occurred in the past with new discrimination today. Race and ethnicity have no place in American life and law.
Now, there are 2 parts to this story. One is obviously the quota system. The second is the backsliding of the US democracy. Let's briefly dwell on the first one. It's a debate that keeps popping up in India as well. We have reservation based on caste and religion in India, and every now and then there are calls to abolish this system. But for the moment, we'll focus on the US. They began affirmative action in the 1960s. Have things improved since then? Let's look at the numbers. Here's a study from 2017. It found that around 9% of freshmen at Ivy League colleges were black. Now, Ivy League is a group of top American colleges. Only 9% of their new admissions were black in 2017. At the same time, black people made up 15% of college-age American population. So the gap is around 6 points. And what was this gap in 1980? The same. So what has 50 years of affirmative action produced? I'm sure there are individual success stories and more power to them. But on a larger level, there is no improvement. Now, I know what some people would say. Doesn't that mean we should continue with the system until there is change? Well, look at the other side. It hasn't delivered in 50 years. Why would it deliver in the next 50? And I'm not saying that scrapping quotas overnight was right. I'm saying a rethink was needed. The US Supreme Court had political reasons for doing so. After all, it is a conservative court. But beyond that, there is a need to ask these questions. In the US, in India, everywhere, do quotas really help? Think about it. Now to the second part of our story. What is happening to US democracy? This court ruling should not be seen in isolation. Think of what's been happening in the last 6 or 7 years. First, they banned tourists from Muslim countries, classic Islamophobia. Then they separated children from migrant families at the border. Even dictators would flinch. In 2021, the crowning achievement, one of the most botched up transfers of power in democratic history anywhere in the world. I'm sure you remember these pictures. Thousands of people stormed the US Capitol. They desecrated both chambers of Congress. They wanted to reinstate Donald Trump as president, even though he lost the election. That did not stop them. Then last year, there was another jolt. The Supreme Court struck down abortion rights. In one blow, women lost control of their bodies. Only 3 countries have curbed abortion since the 1990s, and the United States of America is one of them. And don't think this is a domestic industry. Washington also exports democratic backsliding. The best example is Afghanistan. America's messed up withdrawal brought the Taliban back to power. The people lost democracy. The women lost their freedoms. If this isn't a backsliding democracy, then what is? Hate crimes are up 12%. Former presidents are being charged with crimes. The sitting president's son is pleading guilty to tax evasion. Yet America doesn't care. They still call themselves the beacon of democracy. And I know what some people will say. Take Donald Trump out and half the problems disappear. Perhaps it's true. But Donald Trump is not some anomaly. Donald Trump is a product of America's faulty democracy. So Washington cannot hide behind the Democrats versus Republicans argument. It cannot blame Donald Trump for everything. It must admit that there is something rotten at the core. Do Biden and company have the guts to do that? To acknowledge that America is indeed a backsliding democracy? Well, from recent experience, I don't think so. Before I begin the next story, let me ask you a question. What do former US Presidents Donald Trump and Bill Clinton have in common? Yes, they've both been impeached, drowned in corruption probes, with lies, cover-ups, pardons, and payoffs, and adultery. But do you know what else they share in common? Their love for Diet Coke. Yes, the sugar-free, low-calorie soft drink produced by the Coca-Cola Company. It saw a heady ascent in the 90s. The world swooned towards the drink's aisles, looking for this fizzy elixir that promised to help its patrons shed a few extra kilos. But today, the soda is struggling. Sales have declined every year since 2006. There's hatred from the nutrition community and dejection from governments. Yet many continue to guzzle one can after the other, but now their hopes seem to have gone completely flat because Diet Coke may be causing cancer. And this is according to the World Health Organization. Its cancer research arm reviewed aspartame. It's a white, odorless powder, a low-calorie artificial sweetener. It is added to Diet Coke. It is the very ingredient that makes the soda sugar-free. But for the first time, it is set to be declared a possible cancer risk to humans. A report will be published next month, with the WHO labeling the sweetener, quote-unquote, possibly carcinogenic to humans. This means there is some evidence linking it to cancer. And this news has already spread like wildfire, prompting widespread angst and collective gasps from Diet Coke lovers, but also affirmative nods from those who never believed the soda was healthy.
I'm kind of addicted to Diet Coke a bit, and that's going to make me maybe want to think about changing to like flavored sparkling water, maybe that's not got any sugar or aspartame in it.
I'm surprised it took this long. That was like 40 years or something for them to finally come out with it, but I'm sure they knew it a long time ago.
While the news of death by Diet Coke is making waves, I should tell you that this is not the only product that uses aspartame. The sweetener has been widely used since the 1980s. It is on restaurant tables, in our home kitchens, and our fizzy drinks, chewing gums, cereals, and even cough drops. All in all, it's almost everywhere. It has been authorized for use globally by regulators. It has been defended by food and beverage makers. But the WHO report may change all of that. It may force a shift, especially for food companies.
Aspartame, it tastes a lot like sugar, and it's also really convenient for front of package labeling to say, hey, this is a no added sugar product. It's convenient for companies to kind of construct what we call a health halo around some of these products. Unfortunately, in this case, as you dig a little deeper, you realize that sometimes something like a diet soda might not quite be the health food that we might have hoped.
The consumer taste is a very, very difficult thing to get right. So the fact that they already have it right, that's why they're reluctant to change. But they're going to have to. Companies will have to change, but so will consumers. Even though right now many of them are riddled with confusion because this news contradicts what the world has believed so far.
It seems like everything causes cancer these days, so I kind of take it with a grain of salt. I don't think I'm going to give up Diet Coke completely.
The thing is, nutrition research is constantly evolving. With new studies, long-held facts are deemed lukewarm assumptions.
Really, anytime an organization like the World Health Organization changes guidance, it really just causes people to question, okay, like what can I trust anymore if things are constantly changing? I would encourage people just realize that, hey, this is the way science works sometimes, but also as much as possible realize that there are consistent eating patterns that have been shown over and over again to be risk-free.
The fact of the matter is, a little bit of confusion is better than not knowing if something causes cancer. Remember when cigarettes were sold as something healthy? Maybe this is a case of déjà vu with the sweetener too. And experts say cutting down is the way to go.
Certainly cutting down on it is a great place to start. It's really incredible once you start removing things from your diet. It can be a little bit of a challenge at first, but people's tastes do change.
And this change in taste seems necessary. For decades, aspartame has served as a miracle of modern science. It let us have our cake and eat it too. But now maybe it's time to face the bitter truth. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. French riots continue to spread in the third night of unrest. Over a policeman killing a teenager, the rioters hurled fireworks and tried to loot a Nike store as fire raged at a construction site of an Olympic swimming pool. Clashes erupted in India's Manipur state again after 2 people were shot dead. Virgin Galactic completed its first commercial flight. We told you about it. They took an Italian crew with over 50 miles above the Earth. And finally, what makes the 30th of June significant? We're taking you back to the year 1997 when Hong Kong was handed over to China, ending 156 years of British rule. We're leaving you with these images. Thanks for watching.